Up in federal parliament today to delay a vote on a key housing bill, with both parties remaining opposed to Labour's $10 billion housing policy. This leaves the federal government's plans for a Housing Australia Future Fund at a major roadblock. Meantime, in the Northern Territory, major towns and cities remain in short supply of housing, so the freeze could have further implications. I'm joined by Peter McMillan, Chief Executive at NT Shelters. Mr McMillan, good afternoon to you. The Housing Australia Future Fund, how important do you think it is?
It's an absolutely vital part of the federal government's housing package. It was a commitment that it took to the federal election that there be 30,000 social and affordable homes across Australia. In recent days, we've heard that there's been some progress to the extent that the Jackie Lambie network and the Minister were able to reach an agreement whereby there would be 1,200 homes provided under that fund in every state and territory. And that would make a massive difference to the Northern Territory, where we have 1 in every 20 people are homeless, experiencing homelessness. That's a rate that's 12 times the national average. And just to put that in perspective, if you were to walk into a classroom here in the Northern Territory, there'd be one child or two children in every class that's experiencing homelessness. So that just shows how much housing still needs to be done in the Northern Territory. And to put it also in perspective, 1 in every 2 houses in remote communities are severely overcrowded. So there's a long way to go to get investment in new housing. And I know that there's been a lot of negotiations over the last couple of weeks involving the Greens and the crossbenchers and the government to try and reach an agreement. And of course, we want to see the best agreement we can get out of that, but we don't want to see this fall over and not result in any new homes. It's absolutely essential that we get an agreement struck soon.
Staggering figures that you talk about there. Tell us some of the stories you hear from people. How are they finding themselves homeless? How are they finding themselves sleeping in cars?
Well, it's been, for many decades now, significant underinvestment in housing at all across the territory, and it's really only been over the last 10 to 15 years where we've started to see that turn around. So if you go to remote communities or very remote communities or in homelands, so they're the kind of outstations that a number of Aboriginal families and traditional owners live in, there's been no investment for decades in a lot of those places. And so what we see, especially as you get population growth, is more and more families living together under one roof. It's not uncommon to have 20 to 30 people in one household that's built for 3, that's built for a family of 5, right, with a 3-bedroom house. So the housing has been in an awful predicament. What's pleasing under this budget is we're seeing a further commitment of $110 million from the federal government for the next 12 months to go into remote housing construction, as well as $100 million for infrastructure and repairs for homelands, and also $20 million for Aboriginal Hostels Limited. That's not going to get the job done, but it's an important start.
How much is the crisis in Australia over affordable rent contributing to the problems you see?
Well, it's a massive problem here in the Northern Territory, as it is right across Australia. So we see vacancy rates as low as 1% in Darwin and Alice Springs and other regional centres. We see 20 to 30 people turn up at an open house trying to land a place to rent. The affordability has absolutely plummeted, and that's why it's so important that we've seen at least some modest increase in Commonwealth rent assistance under this budget. A 15% increase will certainly help those that are in poverty or at risk of going to homelessness. Other initiatives such as the Household Energy Fund for the future for getting efficient housing and energy efficient housing is very important. That should get another 110,000 households across Australia with access to reduced power bills. All those things matter, but what really matters the most is that we fundamentally address the causes of homelessness through homelessness prevention and through building more social and affordable housing at scale.
Just as an example, and briefly, if you don't mind, what is the waiting time for somebody who needs a social house? I mean, how long before they get one?
It's absolutely extraordinary in the Territory. In places like Tennant Creek, it can be anywhere between 8 to 10 years. And in other areas like Darwin and Alice Springs, 6 to 8 years is quite common. So we have enormous housing need. We've got a chronic underinvestment in social and affordable housing. Things like the Housing Australia Future Fund will certainly help alleviate anywhere up to 1/5 of the housing need in our urban centres. And we also need to have measures that's happening outside with National Cabinet to have fairer renting laws for people in the Northern Territory, just like we do in other states and territories. Because at the moment, it's very difficult to have any control at all over the rent that you're paying, with evictions as short as 14 days. And we need to strike a fairer deal for renters. And we're very encouraged, finally, to see some leadership from Canberra with the other states and territories showing the Territory what can be done on meaningful and fair renting laws.
Peter McMillan from NT Shelter, thank you very much.